Welcome back. We continue our series on the mistakes I've seen people make over the years, and we next turn our attention to poor tax planning. Taxes are a funny thing. I've never met a person yet who's come into my office and said, David, I want you to help me figure out how to pay more in taxes. I just don't think I'm paying my fair share. Okay? Never happens. Now, they might want you to pay more, but they don't want to pay more. So because of that, everybody wants to legally minimize their tax obligation. Regardless of how patriotic you are or not, you are not required to pay any more than is specified in the tax code. Whatever it is, you are not required to show your patriotism or that you are somehow a better citizen to pay more than what the tax code says. So it's not rigging the system, it's not playing games, it's not hurting somebody else that you pay what the tax code says. Now, with all that said, there is nothing wrong with making the best use of the options that are available to you and also avoiding some mistakes that people make that can cause you extra taxes and really impair or at least put a dent in your financial plan. So one of the things that you always want to do is consider taxes as you make your investments, you make decisions, you do your plans for retirement or your investing. I often tell people that I don't allow taxes to drive the car, but they should be in the car. They don't get to drive, and they don't get to be a backseat driver, but they need to be in the car. In other words, they need to be considered with your investment and retirement and estate strategies. So if you're working with a financial person that says, oh, I can't talk to you about taxes, or you need to consult your tax preparer, do so. In other words, if they say they can't tell you or advise you about the tax consequences, about whatever it is they're recommending, especially if a significant part of the advantage of the particular recommendation is the tax consequence, then you're really only getting a half or 1/3 of a recommendation. You're not really getting a full piece of advice that you can rely on. You're going to need to consult with more than one professional, maybe a team to help you. Now, with those things said, there are some things I've seen over the years that I'm going to put in the not so smart category of tax moves. Don't be offended if this applies to you. There are some things I think with maybe some tweaks or some enhanced strategies you can do better with your money. So number one, getting a mortgage just to get the tax deduction. I've heard and seen people say, well, I've got the money to buy the house or to pay off my mortgage, but if I do that, I lose my deduction. I will be happy to give you my address and a time you can meet me, and I'll be glad to trade you $1 for every quarter. In other words, you give me $1, I'll give you a quarter. That's what you're doing. It's a tax deduction. It's not a tax credit. So you have to spend the dollar in interest to get the tax deduction, which will end up being about 25 cents on the dollar, depending on your tax bracket. So there are times when the mortgage interest will affect whether or not you take the standard deduction or not, but very often it's more a decision about the rate you're paying on the mortgage than it is the deductibility of the mortgage interest that will determine whether or not it's a good idea to have the mortgage. And if you've got the cash in the bank, you're not making much on it, you have a significantly higher interest rate than what you're paying. If you have adequate other cash on hand, yeah, we might want to go ahead and pay off the mortgage. Maybe you don't get to deduct quite as much, but I bet you dollar for dollar at the end of the year and you put all that together, it'll be better for you. Number two, liquidating an IRA all in one year to pay off a mortgage. Again, I like the idea of not having debt, but at what cost? The best way to use 401ks, 403bs, tax shelter annuities, IRAs, all of these things is to draw them out over your lifetime in retirement. That keeps you in a lower tax bracket. Ironically, that's why those things were all created. They were all created as a substitute or a supplement to the age-old not as often found today, pension plans. So what do pension plans do? They give you money over your lifetime. You pay tax on it as you get it. Well, that's what these are if you use them properly, and it will keep you in a lower bracket. You know, stay in the 10 or 15% bracket. Don't take it all out one year and go into the 30, 33 or 25 or some other really high bracket. You never get a break for that. They don't say, oh, you paid higher taxes before, you can pay less this year. That doesn't happen. Each tax year stands on its own. So that's another thing to be careful about. Of course, withdrawing money before 59.5 from IRAs and the like, you have to be very careful, because if you don't follow certain exceptions and rules, you have an extra 10% tax on the money you take out. Ouch. Okay. What else? You also need to be careful with Social Security, and when you draw it, the other income you have. There's a lot of talk about when to take Social Security, how to optimize Social Security for your specific situation. Great. Love the idea. But it's not a single dimension. It's multifaceted. What are your other sources of income? All those things may determine when you should take Social Security and how much of it will be taxed. For some people, when they draw Social Security, as much as 85% of the Social Security benefits they receive are taxed. And this is money you've already paid tax on, right? It was payroll deducted. You paid your share. Your employer paid their share, or if you were self-employed, you paid both sides. You've already paid tax on this, and you're going to pay tax on it again, so be careful. Now, there are some things you can do that are smart. We'll call them smart tax moves, and these are just a few to be thinking about. There are a lot of good things that you can think to do. Number one, for your non-qualified regular money, your cash money, brokerage money, consider low-cost, low-turnover mutual funds, if that fits your situation. Why low turnover? Well, if they don't turn over very often, you have less recognition of income, and you also have long-term capital gain tax treatment. For a lot of people, they're like, okay, David, you just made my head hurt. Okay, but the point is that you want to pay attention to the things you invest in with regular money and how it will be taxed. Back to my point at the beginning about knowing how the investment will be taxed before you invest in it. Now, for IRAs and things like that, the taxation inside of it doesn't matter. Mutual funds, annuities, CDs, all those things are taxed the same inside of an IRA. No tax while you have it in the IRA, and when you draw it out, it's always ordinary income. What else can you do? I mentioned before, drawing the IRAs out systematically, huge advantage, and also making sure you coordinate all the different sources of income. You've got Social Security, you've got a pension or an IRA, you've got some regular money, you've got some inherited money, you've sold a house. All those things have different tax considerations. They all can be brought together into a coordinated plan. In my mind's eye, I'm thinking of all those things coming together and being used to build a plan that gives you the cash you need. You know, in retirement, or as you approach retirement, it becomes a lot more about cash flow. Where will you get the cash you need to retire? And it's very helpful to step back and think outside the box. What are the sources of income and cash flow that you should create? And you want to map it out, not just on, okay, well, what will I do this month or what will I do this year? But what will I do over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What is my plan of attack? And if you think that way, it'll help you with your taxes, and it will help you with your retirement. If you do those things, you know what I'm going to say. It'll help you plan stronger.